Mentally morbid.
This podcast represents the opinions of the speakers and guests to the show. By listening to this podcast or reading any content posted or shared by the Mentally Morbid creators, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as psychological advice. The content should not be used in lieu of medical or psychological advice or any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care. The content here is for entertainment and educational purposes only. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or blog. Please consult healthcare professionals for any medical or psychological care.
Welcome back, Mentally Morbid listeners. This is Annie.
This is Kinsey.
And this is Kayla.
Kayla.
Are you excited?
No, I'm pissed right now. Where's my fucking email?
The listeners don't know what you're talking about.
Bet.
I'm supposed
They've
to
been
get
listening to us talk about this shit for 3 weeks now.
I'm supposed to get my weekly email telling me if I'm beating Away We Go in our step challenge. And it was supposed to be today. And it's now 8 p.m. today. And I have no email. How do I know if I need to keep going for the next 5 days?
Okay, we have to keep going for the next 5 days regardless, because we know that we're going to be perfect too. The issue is, we haven't talked, we found out this weekend, right? What happens next week?
The issue
Listeners,
Yes.
So we've all been giving countdowns to the end of this competition. And in reality, like we've said, it's not the 10,000 steps. It's that we also work out and also have to work still. Anyways.
The issue is the 20-minute jog I have to go on after this.
Yes,
at 9 p.m.
But then we're telling each other how, okay, only, 1 week left. And then I go and look at how they score. And then I'm looking down at the end and it says tiebreaker. And the tiebreaker is another freaking week. So that if this other group who is also getting perfect scores continues to get perfect scores, which is very plausible that it's going to happen.
No.
It's very plausible.
No.
I don't see how there's a tiebreaker then, I don't see how us doing another...
Right, we're just going to continue getting it. It's going to be another week. That's why I think that they should just go with average.
I think that they're
we're
on the last
fucked.
week. I think on the last week they're going to count actual steps, which is going to, I think, put us in our early
I think
grade.
it's so intense.
I'm gonna
Because
have
we're
to...
going to go all out.
I will cheat at that point. This is when I cheat. Gus will be wearing both of our watches
every day.
Gus will be wearing my watch at work.
I woke up Saturday, Saturday, and I ran 4 miles. Okay, I went across the street. I went to the whole end of the road and back again. And I still didn't reach my 10K. Like, I did, pretty soon after that. That was more than a 5K. It's 4 miles.
Yeah.
It's a lot of steps to get every single day for 28 days with the possible additional 7 days.
Right.
If I walk on the treadmill at a 3 speed, which is like brisk
That's pretty
walking.
fast.
That's pretty fast.
For a short person.
Shit.
No, I mean, it's fast. I can't necessarily go that fast with my back. I think it's fast.
So on a 3, I have had to do this multiple times. It takes me about 2 hours to reach 10,000 steps. From basically 0. So,
right.
There's a lot of exercise.
It takes me 2 hours a day on top of all the other shit that I have to do in my daily routine to get these damn steps, and I'm so tired.
The good news is I've shaved about 5 minutes off my 5K time doing this.
Oh, congrats.
I'm definitely faster now.
Right? So thanks, Frank.
Yeah, sure. I guess if you have to thank him for anything, sure. Thanks, Frank.
I love walking because Kevin and I went on a very nice walk.
You and Kevin went on a nice walk.
We went on a very nice walk at a park. It was very lovely. We went, I don't really know how far I went because I just let it kind of
not far enough.
37 minutes because my hips are hurting, so I didn't want to run. And he's been sick, man flu. But very nice walk. So I enjoyed that. It's a nice pretty day for it. But when you have to get it, it hits different.
It's not fun anymore. I'm not having fun anymore. I was telling Annie and Kinsey that, October is my favorite time of the year because it's like nice and cool and like.
Guess what? Fuck your October.
I went on a walk today and I was like, you know what? I haven't had time to read anything. I haven't had time to read any books because I've been trying to get these stupid things. So I'm just like walking around the neighborhood with a book, like
reading
a freaking
time.
nerd. Yeah. You haven't read any more books since we started.
No.
You were going through a book a week.
Correlation.
Well, are you ready for this? I'm about to be Annie in this situation. I've read more during this competition than I have in years. I finished my book club book. Yeah, I finished my book club book 2 weeks early.
If I
Annie
was
doesn't
doing
read
the
audio
version, I do some.
Well, she does.
It depends. Yeah, I do. It depends on the book. In the last book, I did both because I was so attached to it. This book, I slowed down a little bit because like I'm just too fast. And two, I wasn't as interested in this one, so I was just okay with just like getting home and reading. But then we started a stupid competition, and now I'm like every few days I read a little bit. So I have 2 sections to go in this stupid book.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't finished a book club book since the week we started book club, so I'm feeling pretty good. My watch just noticed I was running. Normally I move so slow my watch doesn't know I'm working out, but my watch noticed today.
Yeah, because you have 5,000 steps to go and it is 8:16 p.m.
I wish you could borrow some of mine. I have an extra 200 right now.
That's what Gus says every single night. Gus is like, I wish I could donate.
Every single night he pities you.
No, DJ we were out to eat yesterday and he's like, it was his lunch break and he's like, oh, I've already gotten my 10,000 steps. And I was like, fuck you. Like,
Oh, yeah.
It's literally how I feel too. Our men all walk at work. Fuck them.
Yeah. Kevin comes home right now and he'll go, how many steps you got? And I'll be like, depending on the time of the day, wherever I'm at. And he'll be like, oh, I got like 12,000. Okay.
It's so annoying because I used to get like 18,000 a day.
Wait, listen, it's just we don't walk, we sit. So many of my clients and I have done walk and talk therapy now.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. I have to. When I go in my office Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, I book myself up as much as possible. Luckily last week I had some cancellation, so I had time to actually go for a walk, but if they don't cancel, I don't walk.
Yeah. I mean, it's time consuming, but
it literally takes.
And I cannot wait for this shit to be over.
And he can't even fucking update us as he promised.
It's like Kinsey said, 1 week, maybe 2 weeks.
Yep.
I saw the TikToks for the Gypsy Rose documentary. January 5th.
Yeah. Gypsy Rose is finally opening up because she is
her voice.
A free woman.
Wow.
Hey, remember when we had to do that episode over?
Was that the episode? Oh my god.
That was the episode.
It was
we had
the
to talk about Gypsy Rose twice. Yeah.
Listeners, I don't think any of you guys know this, but we did have to record one of our episodes for a second time because
it wasn't even like, oh, let's do the same thing. We had to re-record the entire thing.
Yeah, no.
Right.
The whole thing was bad. The audio sucked.
We had
so
issues.
Bad.
We had issues with like our computers, and it wasn't syncing. All of it.
Mm-hmm. It was really bad.
Episode 40 and on, really high class.
Listen, I actually had a new person start listening to us, and he was like, "What's the name of your podcast? I'm gonna start listening." And I was like, "Shit." I was like, honestly, like the first lot of them are really bad. So if you just listen for a long time, they get better, I promise.
My mother had to warn somebody that asked about the podcast.
Oh, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, because we were joking about our foul language, specifically Kinsey's. And she said that she had somebody at a baby shower say, "Oh, doesn't your daughter have a podcast?" And my mother, of course, says yes. And then the lady said, "Oh, I'm going to have to start listening." And my mother said, "Well, just be warned."
Yeah. Kinsey?
There's so many thoughts.
I don't have anything to say.
Oh, you raised your hand.
I'm sorry. Wait.
I flexed my hand.
Oh,
Kinsey?
I'm so sorry. That's confusing.
Wait, I have a question. Kinsey, what's on your mind right now?
Oh, God.
Because you never have nothing to say. So where was your mind at?
She's thinking about all the ways she's going to burn Frank's house down.
I think you know where my mind is at.
She wants.
I have to go on an hour run after this.
Are you planning it?
No. And she hasn't eaten dinner.
No, I did. I ate.
Oh, I thought you didn't.
Kinsey, you could have been doing your steps during that time.
I did. I ran around in circles while my food was cooking.
This is how eating disorders start.
Oh, okay, listen. Don't let Kinsey fool you. She did sleep until noon today, so.
I just couldn't feel. I couldn't be alive
what time
today.
did you go to bed?
Oh no, I slept for like a solid 13 hours.
Oh my god. I couldn't do that even if I fucking tried, man.
I literally died. I literally decided I could not be a human today.
No.
I couldn't.
I slept until 7:30 and felt guilty.
Guilty?
Guilty's
Hey,
weird.
Listen.
It's weird.
Here's a funny thought for you. I was driving, where was I at? Oh, it was just kind of yesterday. I was riding home and I was thinking to myself, I've eaten a lot more this weekend. And I was like, well, we were home a lot more because Kevin was sick. And so we were just kind of a little bit more low key. And I was like, it's probably just like a simulation thing, right? Because when you're out and about, you're more stimulated. And so you're not as prone to like want to just eat. When you're home, you might get more bored. And of course, my brain seeks stimulation. And I was like, they should really make a drug that like just really pops up the dopamine for you. And then I realized I was like, oh, that's heroin.
So I hear you
It's
want
a
to
circle.
try heroin.
I was like, no, that's illegal. They do that. There are drugs that do that. We don't do those drugs though.
I just, I'm still stuck on you feeling guilty for sleeping.
Well, I don't like sleeping in late. So if I sleep in late for me, which is really anything beyond like 6, I feel unproductive. Like I want to start my day earlier. I want to be able to sit, but like getting up at 7:30 means I'm in the shower, getting dressed, and then I might have like 10 or 15 minutes before I have to start my day. Getting up at 6 means I get to sit and relax, and I like that.
So here's the thing, right? I went on vacation.
Okay.
I went on vacation. All semester, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but my sleep has cut significantly down. I'm sleeping significantly less than I ever have. Except for grad school, I guess. So I'm getting up earlier almost every single day of the week. I've been going on more trips because Gus wants to go places and I am a people pleaser. And the crux of it all, the very important part, you're coming to my home on Friday and I'm not going to get to relax at all.
I told you, the best I can do is an adrenaline rush.
Listen,
I had to shut my body down to prepare. Go ahead, Kayla.
last time you guys were at my house, we did spend an entire day on the couch watching movies.
Because our trip was a day longer than normal. This is a short trip.
That's true. You were also very hungover that day. And when I fell asleep, I woke up to 17 mini bottles of champagne that you had DoorDashed to my house.
I was active duty the whole time. I just stayed up and watched you guys nap.
You did.
Like a
Like a
dog,
dog.
like a sheepdog.
Like a dog. Like a dog.
guarding the livestock.
Yes. We are the sheep. She is the dog. Yeah. See, you're only gonna.
It wasn't movies. We watched the Kardashians all day.
Okay, but then we also watched
Zootopia.
what's the animal? Zootopia.
Zootopia. That's true. Mm-hmm. Well, Kinsey didn't remember that one. Remember?
And
she's like, we watched Zootopia.
And then we went to Little. So
I watched The Croods over the weekend.
Did you love it?
Movie. I love that movie.
I did too.
So
it's so good.
They did so good with it.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, I quote that movie very often about when you die, can I have your fire? And no one gets it. And I use it at least once a month, and no one I'm around understands what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're only going to be here for like less than 2 days, so I foresee no napping unless an accident nap happens.
An accident nap? That sounds like we're gonna die.
No, I'm actually thinking more of that time. I was thinking more of that time when Annie and you came here, and Annie had to go to that conference thing, and you and I went back to my apartment, and we accidentally napped.
Guys, that's like 2 hours, that whole trip.
Wait. I completely forgot about that.
I was just talking about it because Gus and I, you know where you and I saw the planetarium show? That's where we walked to last week because we went to go see another show there. And I was like, Kayla and I came here once.
Yeah.
And I was like, Annie was at a conference.
You want to know what I was doing while you were at the planetarium and enjoying the farmers market
barely
and
surviving?
All that? I was listening to somebody read the Code of Ethics word by word
At a conference?
It was a training. It was an ethics training that I did, and I was there as a co-speaker. Now I am at this point just associate level, so I'm just kind of like helping them and like assisting them, and I give like parts of the speech, even though, you know, I was horribly underqualified at that point, but hey, where I worked at. But the person that was licensed and had done trainings before, what she learned from the person I worked for was to read the Code of Ethics, because she's like, we have to know these, and we have to be able to say that we've taught you these. So she read the entire code. I cannot express this more, word by word. I'm sitting there horrified. My name was attached to that.
Listen,
anyways, I really hate that for you.
I have never, ever
read the Code of Ethics? Me either.
No. I've never respected anyone more than Annie Scourge Brown on Girls Weekend. What, that must have been 2016. Homegirl listeners, they get here at like midnight, so they're like,
and then we went to Steak and Shake.
They show up places in the middle of the night.
The worst Steak and Shake I've ever had in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. It's still open too, which is amazing. It's still open.
I don't understand how.
I'm scared for people.
Lots of things have closed here. Steak and Shake has not. So yeah, they get here in the middle of the night. We stayed up and we had a couple drinks, I'm sure. We went to sleep. Annie gets up at like 6 a.m. She drives, an hour?
No, it was earlier. I got like 2 hours of sleep that night because we were in bed at like 2 or 3, and I had to get up by like 5.
Because you had to drive.
Then she had to drive like, what, it was an hour?
It was it was an hour or 2 back. I forget where it even was. It might have, Valdosta. I think it was in Valdosta. Yeah, so I go from Tallahassee back to Valdosta.
Kayla and I had a wonderful date day. We did all sorts of cute things. We went to the planetarium. We went to the farmer's market. We watched TV. We napped. Hence the accidental nap.
Yep.
And then around 3 or 4, Annie shows up, and then we started drinking again.
Okay. But listen, one of my favorite memories is at this point, Annie had like 4 feet of hair. Okay. And she's so exhausted that she can't think straight. I didn't make good decisions. And we needed to leave in like, I don't know, 2 hours. We had plenty of time.
I stress about holding other people up. So rather than just being like, hey, guys, I need a shower.
I have never seen someone only wash their scalp. She literally only put water on her scalp, shampoo, and conditioner. No. Shampoo.
I don't even know.
At that point, I don't know.
Conditioner.
Only the first, 3 inches of your hair was wet. And then you were wondering why nothing you did to it was working.
I was tired. I was stressed. I felt like dead weight.
Yeah, you looked like dead weight. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I was so impressed.
Yeah.
So incredibly impressed.
I'm a professional.
So yeah, nowhere to go but up from there.
I don't think there's another time in my life that I would be able to do that. Like, what you did that weekend.
Oh.
No. I was fine. I had a great weekend. What you did that weekend, I don't think that I could ever do.
That was the night. We then went out to dinner. I think that was the Mexican place that we had shots at, right? Was that trip? We had
that sounds
Mexican
right.
That
it
night.
wasn't Chinese, so it must have been Mexican.
Yeah, I think
we only have 2 modes.
Yeah, I think that was Mexican. And then we went out to that bar that had well drinks. So naturally, we're broke. And so we're drinking the well drinks. That's the alley night.
We went to Bullwinkles.
We stay out until bars close. Then we go to
in the
Waffle House. Then we're at Waffle House. So
oh my god.
I was up
fucking
24
nightmare.
hours.
I don't know. I don't think I would be able
the
to.
old one.
I wouldn't be able to do that to you again. I feel like if
I feel like you
happening,
found out about that 4 days ahead of time.
It was
she didn't want to go there. It was like revenge. It was like revenge fun.
It was paid. I basically got paid to go on a girls' trip. That's what it
That's
came down
it.
to. So I was unwilling to cancel girls' trip.
Mr. Krabs is here.
Money. There is not much that I will not do for money. You can quote me on that. Take it out of context. I don't care.
I will.
Listeners, Annie is Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs in the scene where he showers with the money, that's her. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Give it to me.
Oh,
I sacrificed a lot.
I cannot wait to see what stories we have from this girl's trip. They call it
getting old and boring.
They call it Halloween here.
Last time we were kind of old and boring.
So this time it's going to be a richer. We went.
I don't think we left the house last time.
We went to the movie theater and the Chili's.
Okay, well, first of all, it's funny because we've actually gotten more money now. And before, we hardly had any money, but yet we're like, shell it out at that bar. Let's go. Now we're like, I don't know if I want to spend those $40 on drinks when I can go get a bottle for $40.
Well, now I'm just like,
And then you die.
How are we going to get home? It's 2:00 in the morning. I want to go. I want to be able to just crawl in bed when I want to.
I got to wash my face.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kinsey has to pick her contacts off her eyeballs.
I don't have any contacts right now, so not this time.
Kinsey, can we just, and then I swear, we'll go to the story after this. Kinsey, why do you still not have contacts?
I spent all my contact money on vacation, and it's just not in the budget right now.
I thought you were going to say something about an appointment. That was so sad.
Oh, no!
I thought you were going to say that your insurance only covers one or the other. That's how deep it is. No, you spent all your contact money on vacation. Okay.
I don't have eye insurance or dental. I have very, very basic insurance. And like you know, I tried to get a flu shot and they said no to that too. So I basically don't have insurance.
You took your eye money and put it into your museum fund money.
Yeah, I went to several museums, but because I had to switch to dailies, it's $500 to get contacts for the year. So I've just been putting it off.
Can't you just get them for the month?
I don't know.
I think you can. I think you can.
You can just buy one box. You don't have to get 4.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
You can just drop the 4 down.
Okay,
I'll try exactly what I'm talking about.
You can also get your contact prescription from your doctor and then just do it online.
Oh, I planned to, but that's as far as I got. I got the prescription, and that was it.
I feel like there's actually a lot of options here that would work better than what you're doing. But
No,
anywho.
vacation.
At least I have cute glasses that work, it's something.
She literally said, I spent my money on my vacation.
She would rather go on vacation than see. So
I can see! I have glasses!
No, you can't.
First of all, why are you yelling at me? Second of all,
Very good use of the number one rule.
you just yelled at me. That's rule number 1.
She even leaned forward.
She did. Anyway, do you have a story or not?
I'm ready for the crime.
What if I didn't? What if I forgot?
We would just log right out. Leave session, baby.
No, that's when one of us comes up with a story real quick. Kayla leans over, grabs a book, starts reading.
Yeah. Once upon a time.
I can see that. So my sources for today. What? You told me to go.
I told you to scream it at us.
My sources are...
You have to change it. It was quieter the second time.
Oh, my
What?
face already hurts and you're not even here yet. Gus is about to realize how little I laugh in real life until you guys come to visit. He's like, what is wrong with you?
Kevin almost came, just so you know.
Oh, shit. Why'd he back out?
Almost. I warned him. I was like, I don't know if you're gonna have that great of a time. I don't know if it's gonna be your cup of tea.
What do you mean?
I'll video it and send it to you. You'll understand.
Gus got asked to dog sit, and I was like, oh, well, can you do it for this weekend? And he was like, yeah, but I wasn't sure if you wanted me to stay over this weekend. And I was like,
Where is he gonna go?
I was like, where? Also,
That's our space.
I'm
Yeah,
not
now.
sure. I don't think you want to do that. And he was like,
See?
he was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
See?
You should come and then leave. And
Okay,
maybe not even come, honestly. You might
Wait.
decide. He might come on Friday night and be like, okay, that was enough. See you next week.
Is at least part of it protecting him?
I'm not sure how he's going to feel about her yet, so I'm not sure how to answer that.
You guys make me sound like I am the fucking worst.
Kayla, you warned your friends about us very early on. I don't want to hear
that's
it.
true. Yeah. That's
Oh,
true.
yeah, for sure. No, I think protect might be the wrong word, but he's definitely like, I think he will get overstimulated very quickly.
That's why I told Kevin that it's okay if he stays home.
Yeah,
It's
I was
a
like,
lot.
the
It
dog's
is a
house
lot.
is like next door to Ashley's house, and I was like, it just seems like it makes more sense for you to dog sit and have somewhere else to sleep, and like then you can just come here while we're drinking, and then then you leave.
I'm about to see a whole new side of myself with Ashley. I don't think I'm ever going to be the nice person that I could be until I meet Ashley.
Annie, I don't think Ashley is as nice as you think she is. I think she's a very kind person, but I think she's just as sarcastic and bitchy as we can be.
I
Kinsey?
think Ashley is she works in the state, right? So she's just learned how to say things a lot better and control her face a lot better than any of us do.
What are you saying?
Deep down inside, Ashley's same, but on the outside, she is much more appealing than the rest of us. So if I had
She's
to
much more
choose-
socially acceptable.
If I went to the candy store, right, and it was a Crunch bar that had been stepped on and one that hadn't been stepped on, I would probably choose the one that hadn't been stepped on, right? They taste the same, but
What?
you're the one that got stepped on.
That's the best analogy you had.
I'm not even laughing at the analogy. I'm laughing at Annie. Laughing at the analogy.
I am crying. I don't understand this.
So it's like the Ariel
Oh,
and
no,
Kayla's
please,
Halloween
go with
costume.
another one. Go ahead.
Ariel versus Kayla's Halloween costume, right? Like, that's us versus Ashley.
Keep
Like,
going, please.
At the core, they are the same, but people
Mhm.
like one better than the other.
You know what? I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna meet her when we get there. I feel like I'm gonna have a much better idea of it then.
She is so excited. She was like, I have no plans this weekend except to meet your friends.
She's about to be so disappointed.
She is one of the only people that listens to every episode of this podcast. I think she knows she's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different when it's directed at you, you know? It's just different. It's different. Anyways, we're 30 minutes in. We should probably tell a story now.
Hey, Kins. What are your
My
sources?
sources are AETV, AP News, and USA Today.
Not one psychology source.
Oh, and this, and Google.
Okay.
We're ready.
So we're gonna travel back in time again.
Travel back in.
January 20th, 1959. Two unwed college students had a baby.
That's not possible. We talked about that before. You can't
That's
have
true.
babies if you're not married.
It's true. We've talked about that.
And they gave him up. Joel Rifkin was, do we know the name?
Not yet.
Rifkin sounds familiar.
He was given up to adoption and was adopted by Bernard and Jean?
Jean?
It's Jean.
No, I don't think it is, though. It's Jeanne. I think it's Jean.
I
'Cause
think
that's
it's
a-
Jean.
That's how you spell Jean.
It's a genie.
Jeannie. Rifkin. At 3 weeks old. I don't know where he was for the other 3 weeks. The article didn't say. The family, which also included a daughter, Jan, adopted Joel 3 years later, and they lived in East Meadow, Long Island. Through his childhood, Joel was bullied. He was an outcast who had both insecurities that were amplified by a learning disability. He was incessantly teased and harassed by other students, and as he developed into his adolescence, his resentment manifested into violent sexual fantasies about female classmates who had rejected and mocked him, according to a book that was written on him called From the Mouth of the Monster by a guy named Maldenik. I tried really hard.
I don't trust that. I don't trust that.
Bullies targeted Rifkin to establish themselves as the tough kids throughout elementary and middle school, and he would regularly be the last student to line up for the opening bell and show up late to class and wait until the other kids had gone home when the school day ended just to avoid them. In high school, he joined the track team. Yes.
I just want to make a prediction. You don't have to confirm or deny. I'm going to make a prediction that we're going to be talking about bullying.
No. Bullying is not the
Always
answer.
a guess. It's always a guess.
Bullying
Good
is not
try.
the answer. You keep trying, though.
Okay, I'm going to.
He joined the track team in the hopes that being part of an athletic clique would soften the bullying he endured. Instead, his teammates picked on him too. They dunked his head in a toilet bowl. They stuffed a dead chicken in his mouth, and they filled his gym bag with eggs
That
and shaving
escalates
cream.
so
Oh my
much.
god.
Really bad bullying. So during this time, his mom said that she didn't know anything about this up until this point. He basically thought he was finally getting accepted, and he did the school photo shoot for the yearbook, and there was an after party, but they didn't invite him to. It seemed like he was part of the yearbook committee. And this, as well as having his camera stolen around the same time, really negatively impacted him. She told the guy that wrote the book at this point that she had no idea. But not being invited to the party was the only time she saw him being visibly shaken to his core. They later found out he had undiagnosed dyslexia. He stuttered. He had a difficult time following instructions and was physically uncoordinated. This frustrated his father, who was both a structural engineer and a mathematician. He wasn't good at sports. He wasn't good at math, and he wasn't good at basic learning, is a direct quote from the guy who wrote the book. His father was a very patient man, but got exasperated with his son's academic and athletic failures, and it made Joel feel like an immense failure. He did find refuge with his mother. It says that he had a very good relationship with her in the book, and they shared hobbies where they did photography and gardening. He later became a photographer. He really apparently was pretty good at it. Mark Safirk, a forensic expert and retired FBI profiler, interviewed Rifkin and has researched his early years and does discuss how people like him often have early forms of trauma, and this leads to them going down the wrong path in adulthood. I do think it's important to note before I get into like what he did and all of that, that I do think that there is a specific type of trauma that comes with being adopted and not really knowing where you fit in. And I think that, exasperated by the fact that he didn't fit in with his classmates at all, probably was very severe CPTSD for him, right? Like, he had a family that wasn't his biologically. He didn't fit in at school. He had all of these learning differences, and that is a lot. So, in 1989, in his family home on Long Island, which he had later moved back into, his father died. His father killed himself by suicide in 1987, and then he moved back in with his mom and his sister. At this point, he's unemployed. He was working as a landscaper, and his murderous impulses bubbled up for the first time. He got a diffuser artillery shell, which I don't know what that is. He bought it at a flea market, and then the 24-year-old bludgeons a sex worker known as Susan after having sex with her. He smashed his victim's head more than 24 times, and when she tried to get up, he strangled her to death. It's Susie, not Susan, sorry. He then carried her body to the basement, and he dismembered her with a knife. So there have been several things that I've talked about this guy, because we're about to get in. That was not it, unfortunately. We're about to get into it. But basically, he's been interviewed several times. He has done a lot of interviews. There's been a lot of TV shows and books and stuff that have been based on him. So one of those is an A&E true crime special. And during this, when they asked him about it, he basically was very quote-unquote dispassionate and matter-of-fact. He showed no emotion when he described the horrific murder. And
this was the only murder he committed? He's not a serial killer?
No.
Oh.
He was just very matter-of-fact about his crimes. In a 6-year span, Rifkin killed another 16 women in a similar manner as Susie and dumped their bodies all over New York and New Jersey. Basically, they found him because he fled a traffic stop in 1993 and drove without a license plate and crashed into a pole. When police pulled him over, and they basically found a woman's decomposing body wrapped in a blue tarp in his truck bed.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
They have identified 14 of the victims, including Susie, whose real name was Heidi Balk. Her skull was later discovered in a golf course in 1989 and was not identified until 2013 through DNA testing. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, plus an additional 2 1/3 year for endangering the lives of the officers involved in the chase before his arrest. So I guess like he ran a stop sign or a traffic light, they chased him, and then he ran into that, which I actually read recently is one of the leading causes for vehicular deaths in Georgia, because it's one of the only states where officers are allowed to do that right now. Fun fact. Mm-hmm.
Huh.
It's like illegal in a lot of states. I didn't know that. After a series of trials, he was convicted of 9 and was sentenced to a total of 203 years in prison. And he was denied his appeal of the 9 convictions in 2002. He's currently serving his time at the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. He's commented that some of these victims could not satisfy him or please him, and a few ridiculed them. All of them were sex workers. Basically, during this time, when they did something to upset him, he decided they weren't going to live. People have said that they are struck by his lack of self-awareness, his blank stare on his face, and not being able to explain why he did what he did. And he has been dubbed Joel the Ripper in the media and has been considered one of the most prolific serial killers in New York City, New York history. So going into that, I thought that we could spend some time today talking about, originally I was going to talk more about adoption trauma, but some interesting articles actually came up that led me a different way into talking about the idea of internalized marginalization of groups.
Oh.
And how we talk about that with certain careers or people or types of people. There are many different types of serial killers, and there is not a one-size-fits-all profile, which I think is important here, right? I think a lot of times we think that we would have a better idea of identifying serial killers and figuring out their motives and all that, but I think that there's a lot of discrepancy. Also, an interesting fact that I found during my research today, the United States has one of the highest rates of being able to catch serial killers in the world. And they're not sure if that's because there's more serial killers in the United States or because our police officers are more able to catch those serial killers. And I thought that was interesting.
I think it has a lot to do with not escaping into another country.
That's a good point. So let's talk about sex work. Sex work is illegal in most of the country. Prostitutes are far less likely than general populations to report victimization of themselves and their colleagues to police, but are also far more likely to be victimized in their everyday work. There are quite a few ideas behind why women who are prostitutes are more likely to be victims of violent crimes. Some of those, we're going to go into all of those, but to begin with, generally police are seen to be not fond of prostitutes. There tend to be other types of crime in prostitution besides just violence. Yes.
You said everybody he killed were sex workers?
Yes.
Okay.
So when someone goes missing, and it might be a prostitute, they might report it, but basically they're either going to report it or they're not going to report it. One police officer was quoted to say, usually from the stories we hear, there are 2 or 3 prostitutes who disappeared before they start to get a little nervous, and then they don't want to finish telling the report.
Yeah.
For instance, with the Long Island serial killer case, the last victim, Amber Lynn Costello, disappeared, and neither her sister nor her close friends reported her missing because they were too involved in sex work and didn't want to call police attention to themselves. And this is one of the leading causes behind why these women are more likely to be chosen as people to go against violently, and as well as being marginalized by other groups. So I use that term because we're not necessarily looking for these victims. So research has shown that there are a lot of serial killers who primarily go after women in the sex work industry.
Mm-hmm.
We have also shown that we're less likely to hear about these crimes, and we're less likely to be looking for these women. One of the main topics the authors talked about in these articles is because it is a crime of opportunity. Serial killers often do plan their murders, and they try to bring their victims to a location where police aren't going to show up or Good Samaritans are not going to intervene. Prostitutes are already vulnerable populations, and it says especially those who don't work from a brothel, which is not something I would have thought about. They often already are going to secluded locations with the people that are paying them. That's an easy thing. Because of the nature of their work, there's also obviously a sexual component to their relationship, which is often a key motivator for serial killers. About 2/3 of all male serial killers are involved sexually with their victims in some way. Some people have been cited as saying prostitutes are often viewed as low-hanging fruit for crimes, so they're more easily gathered. To target people who aren't sex workers, serial killers have to scheme more. They have to think harder. They have to work harder. Some of them do feign injuries to garner sympathy. One of these was seen as Ted Bundy. They have to spend weeks stalking their victims to detect vulnerabilities in their habits. But when they target a prostitute, it can be as simple as negotiating a fee from across a car window. It's usually very easy. It takes a lot more planning to go after someone who's more educated or socially savvy. Prostitutes are streetwise, but only to a certain extent. Secondly, prostitutes are viewed as the disposable other. They're generally dehumanized in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the public, and in the eyes of killers themselves. And this is one of the main topics, I think, that I would like to circle back to with you guys, because I do think this is viewed as a very lowly group of people. Prostitutes, I would say, are grouped in there with people who sell drugs. They're grouped in there with people who are homeless. They're people that the general public are not necessarily wanting to interact with or worry about. The Green River Killer is another guy that they reference in here. His name was Gary Ridgway, and he was convicted of more than 48 murders. And he said that I picked up prostitutes as my victims because I hate most prostitutes. I also picked up prostitutes because they were easy to pick up without being noticed. I knew they would not be reported missing. I picked prostitutes because I thought I could kill as many of them as I wanted without getting caught. In the Long Island serial killer case, Shanna Gilbert ran around Oak Beach for hours on the night she went missing, calling 911, knocking on neighbors' doors and begging for help. There's a pretty good documentary out there about this guy. This is not the guy I was just talking about, but it's a different guy who they basically found that he was murdering and killing and, burying prostitutes all up and down Long Island Beach. And it went undetected for decades. Like, they did not notice until one person whose family actually cared about her reported it, and they started to dig into it. So this lady was basically running around for hours, calling 911, knocking on neighbors' door, begging for help. Video monitoring in that gated community where she was killed saw her, but the tape automatically deletes and records over itself after a day or two. Had someone in the community thought to keep the footage, or had police thought to ask for it, the Long Island serial killer's identity might have been revealed earlier on. And if it was someone in the community who was running around screaming, they probably would have done something, but they were basically seeing that this woman was not someone that they wanted to help. The one person said, I live on a street, I know my neighbors. If someone's screaming on the street and seems to be in genuine distress, I call 911. And I will also check to see if it's someone I know first. Their indifference gives space for sadistic killers to play out their darkest desires. They also said that some of these men who focus on women like that have a fantasy where they're like, I can have sex with them, I can do whatever I want to them. They're disposable. So the sex worker serial murder victim, it's a lot of words, isn't just a stereotype. It's a dominant demographic reality. According to a recent study, 22% of confirmed U.S. serial murder victims between 1970 and 2009 were known prostitutes. Those numbers are climbing, and over the last decade, 43% of these victims were sex workers. Prostitutes make up just over 0.3% of the nation as a whole, so these numbers are very big compared to that. In an analysis from the Sex Workers Project at the Urban Justice Center, they found that 80% of a small group of street sex workers who responded to a survey report experiencing violence or threats of violence while working. It's a dangerous profession to get into, and being a prostitute increases your chances of being murdered 200 times. And then they wrap it up by also talking about police negligence. Some people believe that police won't look as hard for a missing sex worker as they would for a more quote-unquote respectable victim. One Arthur Robert Kolker wrote in his book Lost Girls how multiple police departments failed to investigate the disappearance of several sex workers for the Long Island beach murders. This became national news very quickly and brought immense pressure on the Suffolk County Police Department investigating the case. But that's only after one important person was found missing. Police departments are known to work by volume, Kolker says, and there's a tremendous amount of crime out there. They know they're not going to be able to solve everything, and they play the numbers. They look at a woman who is over 21 years old and who's missing as a sex worker. They basically assume this person lives a not itinerant life. I don't know that word. And may not even be in trouble. So basically they're saying like they're already doing all of these unsavory things. Do you know the word?
Itinerant. The only reason I know that word is because earlier I looked up itinerate.
Oh my God, look at all comes together.
Yes, and that wasn't a word, and it brought me to itinerant. Do I remember what it said? No.
It says itinerant life, so a less than savory life.
Sure.
So basically, they're looking at 16 cases they can solve, he's saying, and one case they possibly can't, and they're going to go for the 16 they can. He does talk about how they have a lack of empathy for sex workers, and this phrase the lines of communication. And again, because sex work is illegal, prostitutes are far less likely than the general population to report these crimes. Police are generally not very fond of prostitutes because there are other crimes going on usually around these people. all of that to say that these crimes can be seen in several different situations. Some of the ones are the Long Island Beach killer. Ted Bundy is one of those that they mentioned. They also mentioned the Gigolo Beach serial killer that I don't know a lot about, and Jack the Ripper. And each of these men has been shown to interact with less than savory women in order to be able to fulfill their dark fantasies and supposedly not get caught. So I kind of wanted to bring this all into view because I think it's very interesting how there is such high prevalence of violence in this community, and basically people have decided not to care about it. They basically said, this is not a group of women that we care about. These are not people that we care about. And so we're going to allow them to go do this work, which, as we know, a lot of people get into these careers for various reasons, various levels of desperation. And as the research shows, there is an incredibly large group of women that are being murdered in these cases. And these dangerous men are not getting caught because people don't care about the murdered people. It's also, I thought, staggering just to say that someone that works in the sex work industry is 200 times more likely to get murdered than any of us. So as women, I think we already know that there's a lot of violence against women as a community in general, but just to take into account the further marginalization of certain career choices or job fields, as well as kind of like the inherent bias that we put on these groups, I thought was really interesting. Thoughts?
I wrote them down.
Were you ready for me to get into sex prostitution?
No.
It's always a mystery where we were going when I thought so many different things.
But I kept you on your toes, right? Another day.
I'm still on my toes. So we're talking about sex work? I'm just kidding. Gabby Petito, was that her name? Petito?
Yep. That's a really good example.
Yes. So I think, when we're talking about internalized marginalization and how it affects how we see crime.
Can you
how we see the victims of crime?
Hold on. Can you
Gabby
explain what it
Petito.
is? No.
Oh.
Internalized marginalization.
I can. So marginalization, according to my Google search, the term originally referred to minorities and persons from poverty. And it basically talks about how we are intentionally rejecting groups from other groups. And internalized marginalization, I would say, is kind of this idea that we have these internal biases. Everyone does. There's a lot of good Harvard tests on that, on how everyone has internal biases, and these can be about various different groups. So we can be biased against fat people, we can be biased against skinny people, old people, young people, people who have different skin tones than us. Typically, we're going to like people that look different than that. We're going to like people that look like us and dislike people that look different than us. And we're taught a lot of biases based on our parents and our family systems and our cultures. And so most people are taught that sex work is bad. The fact that it's illegal does not help that situation. And so internalized marginalization in this group would be specifically saying, we do not associate with those people because of what the work that they do. You want to add anything to that?
No, I just wanted to give a definition real quick before we got into it.
Well, and that's where I think Gabby Petito is a good example of this, because when she went missing, it really brought up a lot of discussion about how Black women are not given the same, not promotion. What's the word I'm looking for?
Media
exposure.
Media
exposure. Yeah, media attention, media exposure when they go missing or when crimes are against them. And a lot of it does come back down to implicit biases. Gabby Petito was an excellent example of the conventionally pretty blonde woman. And it's funny, I actually link it to a Housewives episode I watched where a Black woman on there brought up the white woman was given sympathy before the Black women were. And she says, there's a stigma, and I honestly wasn't aware of this, so it was kind of eye-opening for me. There's a stigma that white women are more fragile and they need more help in that moment, and Black women are supposed to be strong. And so that's part of the stigma that she was talking about. But when it comes to crime, you have white women who will get shared more often than a Black woman, so that when she goes missing, if a Black woman goes missing, it's knocked down and it's not as talked about. It definitely doesn't get as much attention. And I think that's kind of where this is going, is sex workers are not going to get the same attention, partially because of these biases.
Right. I think the Gabby Petito in particular was a good example for our listeners that don't know. She went missing in the Grand Canyon area. Is that right? She went missing in the desert. Not the Grand Canyon specifically, but the desert.
New Mexico? I don't know.
And basically, they found, like, her boyfriend was immediately a suspect for that, and they did find out that he killed her while they were there, but they found several other bodies of missing people when they were looking for her.
Mm-hmm.
Several. I don't know the number, but it was more than a few. And I think that just shows, and there was a lot of because it was around the same time as Black Lives Matter, and a lot of good information on that, where it's like, when Black women go missing, we don't really see it on the news.
Right.
When a white girl goes missing, oh, Lord. We see it everywhere. Everyone knew about her within 24 hours. We knew she was missing. But I think
a pretty white girl is what's important there. And that's where if you were to have a sex worker where you get a picture of her where she's what you would consider conventionally beautiful and looks like she's like classy and everything else, I feel like it would hit different.
Right. I think it would be really interesting as well to look at like the different factors on like race and ethnicity on this.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, I mean, basically they're saying like all of these serial killers, they kill 10 plus women before they choose the wrong woman. And that woman's mom or grandma or sister actually does report it and follow up with police. And then they find out this guy's been killing people for 30 fucking years, right? It's fucked up. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, like, I think that part of the bias or the stereotypes against this group of people is, you know, the number one argument is they chose that life, right? But, like, there's always context behind why someone goes into sex work. It's not always just an obvious choice. Sometimes it's not a choice at all. We work with enough trauma to know that sometimes there is no choice and people are given into sex work early as children. It's not always like black and white with this population. I personally think that prostitution or sex work being legal is also a big conversation that probably should not be going into this podcast episode because that's a whole nother topic. But I think that it has a lot to do with, I think that we can make it safer for people if we are able to tax it. I think that that's like just a whole nother conversation in itself.
Mine is more so, you know, if done correctly, being safe is always the best option. We obviously see that's not always what happens, but I do find it interesting thinking about their system and what that looks like. Because it's true they can't solve all those cases, especially in certain areas. I would assume there's a lot of crime in New York. There's a lot of crime in Long Island.
And that's the thing is I think even looking at it from the side of, I mean, because as a cop, you're not going to be able to separate your feelings from the job. It's going to have an impact. And I mean, at that point, I would think it would go into detectives. And if you think about the area, they're not going to be low on crime. Like they're going to have, I don't even know, like hundreds that, I don't know what the number was.
A lot,
like, but
probably.
I imagine that there's a lot that they have to search through. And then you think about how close-lipped other people are probably going to be because, you know, they might look at their peers and they're not necessarily going to want to talk to the cops when they go searching for certain people that might have seen them last. They're going to be maybe in similar, crimes or just in the area. They might not trust cops. And so I think it's going to be a lot more difficult just to do the detective work that they would have to do versus somebody, you know, outside of that world. They might be more willing to speak to cops or just have more information. But kind of going back to your point, we're basically saying that Joel Rifkin was able to kill so many people because of these implicit biases, right? Not so much that he did it because of that. or both?
Both, yeah. I would say both, yeah. What they're saying basically is that serial killers specifically go after this population knowing they can get away with it. So, like, they're using implicit bias to fuel their acts of violence. They're saying, I want to hurt women because women hurt me. I know people don't care as much about this population. Same with homeless women, probably. Like, this idea that, like, people aren't looking for them.
Yeah.
So whether they implicitly have a problem with those groups of people, they know other people do, and they're using that for their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and these things are handed down from, like you said, like it's cultural, it's familial, societal, all of these different messages about how we view it. I mean, there's, you're going to have, the church is going to have a lot of play, especially at this point in time, as this guy is coming up. And the church is going to have a lot more say in politics. Just like we mentioned, the fact that it's illegal is also going to play into this, because, if it's illegal, then they are a criminal. They're not necessarily just a victim, but they are a victimized criminal at that point. And so I think those things by itself, you're going to have a different level of sympathy. I would say that if I'm watching the news and they talk about a drug dealer with no context to the person, if they talk about a drug dealer was shot dead, I'm going to have a very different reaction than if they talk about a person was robbed and shot dead at a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know anything else to have already formed an opinion on my level of empathy. And I think, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not defending that, but I think it's normal. It kind of like we talked about in a previous episode, where our brains are going to fill in gaps. This is a very normal process that our brains do. It's automatic. It's default. What we do with that, though, is what's a problem. So that we are all going to have implicit biases. But if I go out and I say that person, that drug dealer that was shot dead, doesn't deserve the same level of police work because they are a drug dealer, that's where it becomes a problem.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Being able to like override your immediate thoughts and biases is important work that I think everybody should work on.
I don't think it's addressed enough. I think we often use terms like racism, sexism, when we're not really addressing the actual issue, which is implicit biases, or we can internal marginalization, either way. I don't think that the majority of people that we might label as racist identify as racist as much as they don't recognize where their own thoughts and feelings are coming from. I'm not saying they don't cause equal amounts of harm to the person, but I think that if we were to look at things like this through the eyes of implicit biasness and educate people on that part, it would have a bigger difference in how people receive the discussion.
Yes. Yeah. I think having an open mind is probably one of the greatest strengths that someone can have, because if you're not open to understanding your biases and learning how to react to them in a more acceptable and loving way, then I don't know how much you can grow as a person.
Right. And I think it is really important. Our listeners, you should take the Harvard bias test if you haven't already. There are several, and they're very interesting. And we all have implicit bias.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to learn how to challenge those, or at least start by recognizing what they are, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
all this...
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say all this to say, we do need to recognize that there is a lot of violence going against our marginalized communities, and currently we're not doing anything to stop that. And like Kayla said earlier, a lot of these women are being forced into these careers, and I just, they're not safe as it is, and allowing them to be senselessly murdered and killed because we're not protecting them is not necessarily the right way to be doing things. It's not the right way to be doing things. A lot of these women are already being treated very, very badly in these careers, and I would like to find ways to help protect them if we can, find ways to improve this system, because people are doing it for money or because they have to or because they're being forced to by somebody else. They're not doing it.
I think we have a lot of work to do with this community, because it's not going to change overnight. The amount of negative attention that these people get is not going to change overnight, and their survival skills is also not going to change overnight because they are so used to hiding from people. They have shame and guilt, and they're hiding from families, and a lot of the population maybe don't know what they do on the side or what they do, you know. So just like being as a society, being more open to having those conversations with an open mindset, I think is a good first step.
I read a book. I wish I could remember the name of it. It's in my Audible list. So I listened to a book one time about, it was, gosh, I can't hardly remember it, but it was something like the woman goes to a new town to be a teacher. I think it's, oh God, I can't remember where she goes, but it talks about women's suffrage a lot. And it's a fictional book, and right next to suffrage, it addresses women's female sex workers. And so this is, early 1900s that this book is taking place, and they address the inequality that women are facing. And of course, the women of the church are saying that women not all women of the church, but there was a group of women in the church and in the society that are saying that women's suffrage is going to do nothing but lead to more women doing these things. You give women the right to choose, they're going to choose poorly. They need more structure, stuff like that. And so I think when we're thinking about current day, I think the issue is tenfold as to what the answer is. I think there's a lot of political issues as far as economics go that need to be figured out, but also the fact that while we've come a far way with respect for women, we still have a long way to go as women not being seen as something to use. So I think there's a lot of different perspectives that have to change on this, not just one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But I will say, I wasn't really sure where we were going to go with this, so I had different ideas down. I was actually...
she was actively guessing as you were talking.
So I wrote down bullying first, and I was like, okay, yeah, bullying, trauma. Then I was like, oh, we're going to talk about trauma again. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's get ready for a good PTSD conversation. Then dyslexia came up, and I was like, oh, we're going to talk about dyslexia. No, we're not. And then when you start talking about the crime more, I was like, oh, we're going to talk about repressed feelings. So that, like, this is how he got it out. Like, it was unacceptable to society, so he took it out on the women. Where we went is really good. It's just not where I thought we were driving to.
You did not have a guess about the sex population.
Can't imagine why.
Can't imagine why.
Oh man. Good
well
topic,
done, Kinsey.
Yay! So don't forget to follow us and like us on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and send us money.
We're done.
Oh, we're done. Sorry, we're not done.
No, we're done.
The time says we're done. So
yeah, follow us everywhere, and share us with your friends. I think that's important at this point. We have the same listeners every week, so I'm gonna need you guys to like tell your friends or something, please.
To be honest, we don't really know who our listeners anymore because we don't really look. We don't have time to look. We're doing all these steps, so
right. Yeah, the steps are really taking it out of us. But anyway, next week is me.
Cool story. So we hope you stay mental.
Stay morbid.
And we'll see you Tuesday.
Mentally Morbid.